And good morning, everybody. We are live. Congratulations. You made it through the week. Another week of fantastic food safety, amazing quality products, all the type of foods that we all enjoy every single week. And the hardest part of what we do in food safety is if we do it well, nobody notices. But we're here to say today, Tom, Allie, and I are going to say, good job. We really appreciate everything that you do. If you're new to the chat, welcome. Pull up a chair. My name is Brian Armentrout, and this is Food Safety Chat Live. And every Friday at this time, 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern, we live stream for an hour and we talk all things food safety. And in reality, we're not the stars of the show. You are, because we're here to answer your questions and talk about all things food safety. You'll notice if you're new, not a lecture. This isn't a bunch of PowerPoints. This is just a conversation, which makes us so much fun. And if you are new, you'll notice that we have an amazing group of people who are here pretty much every week if they can make it, which is a huge investment of time. And we all have very, very busy schedules, but we're sharing information, we're growing and learning, and we're making our food supply better for everyone. So one of the things that we love to do here in the chat is we let everybody know where you're at in the world. I am in Loveland, Colorado, where today, Allie, it's going to be, believe it or not, I think we're going to be in the upper 80s here today. It's been a very warm week, so bit of a warm September for sure. Where are you at today, Allie?
Calling in from Portland, Maine, and
Beautiful.
It is not that warm. We have hit autumn. So it's getting chillier, high 60s. The leaves are turning colors. The apple orchards are open for picking, and it's quite beautiful here.
Wonderful time of year. It sounds absolutely gorgeous. So then all the city folk come up and bug you, and what is that, leafers? I think that's what we called them in Pennsylvania when I was there.
Leaf peepers. Yep, the peepers.
Yeah. Leaf peepers. I like that. And Tom is a new guest here in the chat, and I always love having new guests. So Tom Drapeu, and he is with Call Freedom Pest. How you doing today, Tom?
Excellent. Thank you very much, Brian.
And where are you at?
We're in a quaint little town just outside of Boston called Merrimack, Massachusetts. Right down the street from Allie. We are also experiencing the same environmental loveliness with the leaves and changing there. We're going to hit a high of probably 62 today, which means for us that the mice are heading into our homes and businesses. Always good.
So yeah, if you work in the field of pest control, yep, your schedule is depending on the seasons and how you're relating to things. So we think of leaves falling, you think of mice coming inside. Exactly. Elena, good morning. Nice to see you. She's been putting up some wonderful content here on LinkedIn. She gave a shout out for my book, which is sitting back here. There it is. And so she gave a nice book review on LinkedIn. So thank you very much, Elena, for that. I really appreciate that. Word of mouth in our business is everything. So that's really cool. So with that, let's everybody join us for a toast of your favorite. Ooh, you got the mushroom mug. Awesome.
Always.
Cheers.
Cheers. Happy Friday.
Very nice. Very nice. Indeed. So so in case the audience hasn't noticed, I have a new camera, so hopefully that's not making me look too weird. But you're trying around, trying to get all the settings right and everything. So hopefully that's going to work out correctly and it doesn't all bug out. Wow, 62 in Texas this morning. Nice. Larry's got his coffee. Very, very good. So next thing, I've been looking forward to this. I found an amazing dad joke. Are you guys ready for the dad joke?
Bring it on.
Why can't rodents be successful criminals? Because someone always rats them out.
That's a good one. That's a good dad joke for sure.
Gotta have a themed dad joke for the chat. So those always work well. Hey, there's Cheryl. Cheryl always it's kind of a weird thing with Cheryl. So I see her in the comments afterwards, but I don't see her on the live stream with the comments. So Cheryl, we can see you. So that's awesome. Looks like Larry's having a little bit of trouble there with his picture, but everything's looking good on our side. We're good here, Larry. So hopefully it fixes on your side. So we'll keep going here. Yeah, Larry's having some problems. Hopefully that gets fixed here. So one of the things, so I'm sure with Allie on here, everybody's aware what you do, but please give a little refresher, please, what you're up to, Allie.
I am a food safety consultant, coming off of being an auditor for many, many, many years. And I just am working in the industry for all kinds of manufacturing, food, or even packaging, and help them with their food safety needs.
Nice. And Tom, as I'm sure people can figure out here from your email address, what do you do?
So I own a pest management company. We've been in business about 30 years.
Nice.
Specialize in, not only residential, but commercial pest management. And with that, we want to protect homes, families, and of course, our food networks.
Nice. And so with our chat here for today, this is going to be a fun one because what we're doing, and I love it when we have a couple of guests on because it makes for even more interaction and back and forth, is we're going to kind of go through pest control, but not, okay, here's a map of your traps and things like this. It's more what you should be doing relative to this. And then Allie's going to be putting on her auditor cap and giving insights into if an auditor is coming in to look at your programs and your systems, what are they looking at when they're looking at pest control programs so that you can make sure that you've got an awesome program set up and it's doing everything it needs to do. And like Tom was saying, that you're keeping those little mice out that are wanting to find ways into your plant here in the fall. So really, guys, I think to kind of set the groundwork on this is the way FSMA is set up, it's all around the prerequisite programs and then the preventive controls. And if you have really crappy prerequisites, your prerequisites aren't going to work, which is why you always see when FDA writes up a company with a warning letter is it always starts with, okay, here's the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. Here are your GMP failures in your facility, which then leads to your failures in your food safety plan or whatever it is that they're not happy about. You got to get the basics right. So if the people aren't washing their hands correctly, if GMPs aren't being followed, pest control exactly the same way. You have to have a really robust pest control program in place. And I think a lot of times because quality managers are busy, sometimes it gets overlooked. And the pest control operators will come in on the off shifts. A lot of times there'll be a report on your desk in the morning and you'll take a look at it and you'll file it away. Not good. That's you're not getting what you should out of your pest control program with that. So really, I kind of wanted to start with our conversation here today, Tom, around the basics. So I'm a brand new food company, and I realize that I need to have a pest control program. So what should, if I'm shopping around looking for things, what are some of the things that you need to know from me in order to start that conversation?
Yeah, that's a great place to start. We walk in and we want to look at a couple different things. Number one, we want to know, what are you going to do? Are you going to process meat? Are you going to bake muffins? Are you going to process fish? And so all of those things have little inconsistencies that are going to make a difference in the overall IPM plan. But it really boils down to your facility. What's the facility look like? Is it in good shape? Is it new? Is it old? The technology that was around when you built it, when the facility was built, are you going to, change some of the filters? Air handling took a big change during the COVID timeframes. Where are you located? I spoke earlier about mice in New England. We've got plenty of mice to go around in every single facility. That has to be one of the things we look at. And then, in Florida, you might have cockroaches, and they have a different way to deal with keeping cockroaches out of their facility. So those are the obvious things we're going to look at, and look at, the going back to the facility. What are the things that we need to be concerned with? How big is your building? Do we need to worry about birds on your building? All of those things that are going to be the initial layout of the facility itself.
Yeah, all good points. And yeah, one of the things that, like from my past, I worked in a sugar refinery. So we would make liquid sucrose for industrial applications. And as part of the refining process, you would have carbon filters. And the guys every day, they'd have to go in and clean these carbon filters and throw away all the spent carbon with all this goopy, syrupy stuff in it, which was beautiful for birds. Oh my goodness, they love that stuff. And so we had to be really, really careful that we had, covered disposal systems and made really careful, because just the process itself, right? We're making food, and this is attracting lots of stuff into our plants. And it's something that you really need to take into consideration. So Allie, then from an auditing standpoint, right, you're coming into the plant, and this is a brand new plant that you haven't seen before, right? What's kind of going through your mind if you're looking at pest control as you're driving up to the plant to get started?
A lot of the same things that Tom mentioned before, the condition of the facility. Most auditors will also do a quick drive around the facility before they actually park and go in. Mm-hmm. And that right there can give you a basic understanding of what's going on related to pest management. Are there doors open? Because the minute you walk in the building, miraculously, all the doors are closed. So doors open, standing water outside, all what's around me. Is there a lake on one side of that facility? Is there more buildings? What other kinds of buildings? And then, like you said, the waste. Definitely food production produces food waste that will attract different kinds of pests and other things. So we're looking at all the same stuff that Tom mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and so part of that then too, there's the exterior of the building that you can't see, and Tom had mentioned this as well, which is the roof. So at some point you got to get up on the roof and take a look around, because that's a huge area for pests. So as Tom had said, birds, and so birds are going to be up there on the roof. They're going to be looking at things up there. Are there areas that they can roost and nest? And to your point, Allie, standing water up there. So if you have water, it's going to get into the building if it's sitting up there. So that's one of the things I always look for with auditors is, do they go up to the roof and take a look around? Because you can learn a lot when you get up on the roof, for sure.
Yeah, I'm going to just interject for a second. Tom and I were doing an IPM assessment at a pretty large bakery, and we went up on the roof. And it was just the two of us because personnel was not able to go on the roof with us, which is something that you find where I'm afraid of heights. You guys go up without me. But and not only did we see pest issues, but all of the other issues, the maintenance issues, there's so many things you can see up on a roof. And again, Tom and I have so many stories, but this is one we did recently. And we were just looking at each other like, are you seeing what I'm seeing? Is this real? Do they know this is up here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And with winter coming on, animals are looking for warm places to shelter. Is there a nice area where they can hang out where it's warm? And so on the roof, there's lots of nice pieces of equipment up there that allow for that. It's like, here's a nice motor that's running the HVAC system that's putting off heat, and they snuggle up to those things like cats do sometimes in the winter when they get in your car engine area if you're not careful. So getting up there and looking at those things is really important. The other piece that you guys mentioned as well, and I wanted to make sure this was explicit, was where is your facility at? So a facility that's in a suburban environment, very different than a rural environment. Because if you're in Wisconsin, in the middle of nowhere, and you have cornfields all around you or what have you, lots of things living in those crops that are going to be potentially looking to come into your plant. So you have to be very aware of those things. A weird one that I've seen in the past is I would have plants that would be by railroad lines. And a lot of times, the trains going by would disturb whatever was hanging out there, and then they would come right running to your plant. So yeah, a survey of your overall facility and your needs is extremely important. So Tom, when I'm looking at, so I'm the quality manager and I kind of understand my facility. I've done a pretty good survey around there, so I can give you some good information. Is what should people consider when they're looking for a pest control company?
Yeah, so the pest control companies that you're looking at, they need to be able to a couple different things. First of all, you want to make sure that their educational background. What are they, what are they being trained on? Do they have the education needed to take care of reporting, trend analysis? What are they using for software? Certifications, that's always important. You want to make sure that you've got enough staff to handle the problems that could be coming up in the facility that you're having in. Predictive analysis, some software companies don't provide that. I don't want to give any plugs, but PestPack does have predictive analysis. It works well. And realistically, you got to meet with the team. Who's going to do the inspections, who's the backup guy, who's the supervisor, and just have a frank conversation. How do you handle this? How do you handle that? Who's going to be, coming to quarterly meetings? Can we do it over Zoom? So, developing that candor, so that when there is a problem, you feel comfortable saying, hey, look at, from the pest control company standpoint, there's a problem here. It's been ignored. It hasn't been fixed. The door is still open. That really needs to be addressed. It's causing, a problem where you don't want to have a conflicting type relationship. And the same thing with the owner or whoever you're going to meet with. If he says, your predictive analysis is good, but it missed this, what can we do about that? You got to be able to have that conversation both ways. So a good pest management company will have that, have multiple people that are going to meet with you. They'll have a good software. They have good education. They have experts coming in and training them on different aspects of food safety. And those are the things that you're going to have that will develop and have a good communication chain and be able to work out issues when they come up.
Yeah, and so part of this is that pest control operator is part of your team, and you need to treat them like that. They need to have that feedback. And to your point, Tom, if the pest control operator is coming in and he's noticing that there's a gap in the door and it's a potential infiltration area, and the plant doesn't do anything about it, that's a problem, right? Because then all of a sudden it's like, hey, we keep getting these problems with mice. Well, yeah, I've told you about this and you haven't done anything about it. It's a two-way street. And part of what I always like to do too with my facilities is talk with the actual pest control operator and get to know them, almost like an interview, right? It's like, okay, well, how do you approach your job and what type of things are you seeing out there and what's your communication style? Because like we talk about here on the chat quite a bit, guys, is that pest control operators, quality managers, whatever, we're all people and we have our own styles and our own way of doing things. And you need to understand that so that you can get a good rapport going with that person so that when they come to your plant, they feel like they're part of the team and not, it's like, okay, I write up my report and they never see me. No, that's not going to build a good relationship between the two partners here.
Exactly. Yeah. And that relationship is going to be what, gets you through the difficult times, because in the beginning, if it's a new facility, it's not as difficult as an older facility. And by having that open lines of communication, and knowing who you're going to be meeting with, that really makes a difference in the whole outcome of the program.
Right. And so part of this then too is with that pest control company, what do they specialize in? So some pest control companies, I only do like, school districts or whatever, and they may not have experience in food plants, and that's really important that they understand how a food plant works.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree. And the relationship with auditor and the pest management company is beneficial as well. So when there's that open communication there, what are you seeing? Why isn't this in your reports? Or how can I help you get some kind of action from the facility? So when there's open communication everywhere, it's obviously going to make a better, stronger program.
Yeah, definitely. And we're going to kind of talk a little bit here toward the end of the chat, kind of around some of the cool stuff that's coming. And we've already seen this in quite a few different areas around like traps that have Wi-Fi and remote signaling to let them know. It's crazy, some of the stuff that's coming up there. So more of that coming here down the road. But that's really, really cool stuff. So that relationship again, and so when you're doing the auditing side of things, Do you, I mean, so a lot of times, it's fortunate if the PCO is there and you can talk with the pest control operator, but a lot of times not, right? What's your experience been with that?
Both. And usually if the pest operator is there or somebody from their management team, the regional manager or technical manager might be there, it's usually at the request of the customer. And it is beneficial, quite frankly, to have them there during the audit so they can speak to what is going on when there are questions that are raised by the auditor. So you don't want to come off as, well, I just saw a bunch of empty traps with no bait. Then perhaps the PCO can step in and say, well, here's the reason, here's what's going on. There can be a little bit more conversation. So it's definitely beneficial. When they're not there, that's okay. Sometimes we can call them, but all we have is what the paperwork says. So then we really hope that the documentation is detailed enough.
Well, that's a good point. It kind of gets here what Larry's talking about, and we'll get to your questions here in a second, Larry. But really around trend analysis, right? So let's say that I'm looking at the documentation and I keep seeing activity in a certain area of the plant. It's like, why is that? Why do these hits keep happening? Go to the source.
Exactly. And that's the primary reason why we do trend analysis, Brian, is because of the fact that we want to be able to, intelligently address issues like that, door with a rotted, door sweep. Those are the things that you may not see unless you're taking a second look at them. And the trend analysis is why you're gonna take that second look.
Right. And I think that really gets to what Larry is saying here as well, right? Which is, all right, how do you explain to the top management the issue is not a PCO spray and trap problem, right? It's like almost everything that we do in this field it's like, no, it's just not, throw more traps at it or these types of things. If you have a systemic issue, it's going to be there until you remove that issue. And just putting a ring of traps around that faulty door doesn't fix the door.
Exactly.
I get it. It can be difficult to get top management on board with some of this stuff. So Larry, what I would do when I was an auditor, first and foremost, I said, go get management and come down here. Let them see what you're seeing. Okay, because they can look, you can write something down and then somebody can say, well, I was there, it wasn't that bad. Unless they see it for themselves. So that's one way to kind of get them on board is, do you see what I'm seeing? Plus all the other documentation and evidence, if you will, that you can show top management. Look, we've Pest management has written this up for 3 months in a row now, and we've had these findings on our audits, and we're getting questions or even customer complaints, maybe. So there's a lot. You just got to bring all the evidence and bring it up.
Yep, I view it as just like Larry's saying here. It's corrective and preventive action. Is if you're seeing a trend, it doesn't matter what it is. Consumer complaints, environmental monitoring hits, pest control. The auditor's always going to come back to that. All right, you're seeing these activities. What are you doing about it? Yep. And if the answer is right, that's not a good answer.
Exactly.
So with that, then too. So part of what you need to also look in the plant as well as special requirements that plant may have. So for example, if you're producing organic product, the pest control company needs to understand that because there's limitations on the scope of what you can use inside that facility relative to pest control. A little word of advice on that as well, because I had organic plants and we had our organic operating plans for those facilities, is what's in scope and what's out of scope. So if you're outside of the facility is not in scope for your organic plan, then you can manage that much more aggressively outside of the plant than you can in the plant, and you need to be able to explain that to the organic auditor, right, Allie?
Oh, absolutely, and that's why the education part is so important with the technician and whoever the management is that you're talking with at the facility. What are the standards you're following?
Yep, definitely. So one of the things, Tom, that that's really cool is it used to be that pest control, you'd have the giant book full of all the stuff, all the SDSs and the certificates and the insurance and everything else in there. That's pretty much going away, isn't it? It's all online now, isn't it?
It is, to be honest with you. There's a cost associated with it. So the facilities that have, the ability to migrate everything online, depending on the software you're using, it makes it a lot easier, especially like when Allie comes into the facility, any inspector rather, and they're saying, I want to see the licenses and make sure they're up to date, and I need to make sure you have the latest SDS sheet on this product that your pest management company wants to use. Instead of digging through that book, you can just go to that section, and the latest updates are sitting right on top. So that's the biggest aspect of the online part of it. It's nice and neat. No one's missing anything. And when you have all the inspection records laid out, and you can just thumb through them like you're scrolling in your social media account, by date or whatever it is, it just makes things so much better as far as organizational capabilities, and you can really look at trend analysis to a different level, because you can say, on the third quarter we noticed obviously you're going to have more rodent activities, and you can just go right to those inspection reports and just read what the technician wrote, and there is the problem, where before you'd have to, flip to the right tab, and so online data management is definitely the way to look at record keeping now.
Yeah, and I always kind of view that as auditing fish in a barrel, right? So I would have an auditor who would come into one of my plants and go through the pest control book, and this certification for pest management for the PCO is a week out of date. Haha, I get to give you a minor. It's like, oh, real? Oh, come on. And he's, the auditor's right, but still, it's just like, oh man, it just always just felt like such ticky-tack stuff that I would get dinged on that, and then the quality manager would roll his eyes, and you'd move on. But I don't know. What do you think around that, Allie, from an auditing side?
Yeah, they have to find something. But there's a benefit. So if you had your pest operator there, he could say, one moment, let me call the office and get that fax right over. Because obviously it's not outdated if they probably just didn't have time to put it in the book yet. But like Tom says, when it's online, it usually gets done more automatically, and you don't have to worry about those things.
Right. Well, and I think too, from the auditing side, number one is if you're an auditor, and I'll be curious to see your opinion on this too, Allie, is that you're looking for that ease of conversation and that flow with the quality manager and the team that you're talking with. So when you ask them questions, they know exactly what you're looking for. They can pull it up immediately. Examples and proof of what they're doing, you can look at that right away, and it's just like, oh, okay, great. And so as the audit goes on, as you become more and more comfortable with how the plant is doing things, it's like, okay, yeah, this operation is buttoned up. They understand what's going on. Conversely, the quality manager who doesn't have a good grasp on the pest control system say, oh yeah, that's right, we're supposed to do that, right? Hold on a minute, right? Then they're gone for 15 minutes, and then they come back with some documents that kind of look like they may have just been put together. Does not inspire confidence with the auditor. So then any good auditor in those situations is going to dig. Right? So now it's like, oh, there's something that's not quite right here.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's the spidey sense starts going, like, what do you know, what's going on here? And then you do start asking more questions, and then you dig deeper. Absolutely.
Yeah. So as Larry says here, PCO detective. Yeah. So that's from that's a saying I was saying here that we need to be detectives from a couple of weeks ago. So thanks for the callback, Larry. Appreciate that. I'm sorry, Tom, did I cut you off there? Were you going to say something?
Nope.
Oh, you're good. You got some awesome comments coming here. Yeah. So be sure you can access it before the auditor gets there. Oh, absolutely. Right. You should be making sure, and that's a great comment. If you're in the conference room and you're not quite sure where the website is and you can't log in, you got to look it up, or you're not quite sure where your pest control book is, and that's my supervisor who takes care of that again. Right. It just goes back to those basics of making sure that you understand what's going on.
Yes. Sorry, Tom. And just to add to that, there's There's nothing in any standard that says it has to be electronic versus paperwork, but it does say you have to be able to access these. Okay, so if we're going to use online, and if Tom is not there to remind people of the password or whatever, the quality manager will have to sign on, or whoever is responsible. So she's absolutely correct, Vana. Yes, make sure you can access it before the auditor gets there.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely, and that's really key. So one of the things I used to do in my past life, Tom, and I'm curious to see if people still do this, is I would have like a little rubber mouse with my business card or whatever, and I would put it in a tin hat to see if the pest control operator would find it. You see that type of stunts anymore, or do people quit doing that?
Yeah, we don't really. There's not too much of that going on. One of the things that I did have a company that always had a piece of paper in the logbook, to make sure you're logging in, and it lasted probably about 5 weeks. And the technician asked me what should they do with that, paperwork, and I was kind of confused by it. But I said, well, let me see. So on the next one, I went with them, and we took the papers and we walked into the office, and I said, look, we can, this is funny. I enjoy, joking around with you, but if I miss one and the inspector comes in, just be aware that that's not really going to look good for either one of us. Yeah. But no, we don't have to have too many more of those anymore. I don't know if you heard, but there's a lot of Ring cameras out there now, and cameras inside buildings, and they're pretty on top of what's going on. And that's the biggest thing we face is the technicians making sure they're checking everything, because the consumers, especially the quality managers, they get on some of those cameras, and they want to know why the technician was at a certain location poking around for 4 minutes. So.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, and that's the thing too to think about, and this is where it's very important to partner with your pest control company, is that pest control operator has full access to your plant, right? So who is that person coming in, and what are they doing during that? And that vetting process to make sure that you're comfortable with who those people are and that you trust them just like any other member of your team, super critical, right? And like I said earlier, right, and I think it's important to reemphasize that, is they're a member of your team, and you need to make sure that you treat them that way, and also that they feel that they're part of your team, that they're just not somebody who's doing something when you're not around. And because that's absolutely the wrong way to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, Larry was asking about RF for trapping outside and inside. You use and take. So I guess he's asking about notifications for the traps. So with like radio frequency or things like that. What are you talking about, Tom? Exactly sure.
So there's a couple big players in the market today that do a lot of notifications as far as when usually it's a rodent, but with advancements in some of the detections, they can tell you if it's a small insect or a large insect. But the reality is that there's two types. One is based on 5G. So in other words, it's going to tell you exactly when a insect or rodent has come into the trap. And the other one is just, Bluetooth. And when the technician walks into the facility, they're going to walk around and they'll know exactly which devices have catches in them, and when's the last time that they looked at that device. So there's a couple different takeaways here. The first one is that if you're designing an IPM program, the reason we put out monitoring devices is to know what's going on without someone standing there 24 hours a day, obviously. Yeah. And the fact that we need to look at a device or a station more on a regular inspection, because the fact it has something in it frees up the technician or the inspector to look at the facility, which is really what we need to do. We need to look at the facility as a whole, not just the traps or the monitors. Yeah. And by doing that, we're getting a more well-rounded inspection every time we go there. So for instance, Bluetooth, the technician walks in. I'm sure that everybody on the call here today has had an outside facility that has 50 or 80 different monitoring stations, and the technician goes and starts out there, and By the time he's done checking all of them, maybe he's been there for 2 hours already. And he's looked at 80 different stations, but he hasn't really looked at the facility. Well, with Bluetooth monitoring, we know exactly which ones have activity and when the last time we checked it. So maybe we don't have to check it this week, but we can check it next week because we know that every 2 weeks we want to get them checked and there's nothing in there. So it provides us with that. And there are some that tell us instantaneously. So for inside a facility, we want to know the second there's a mouse or an insect where it shouldn't be. And there are different products that tell us, they'll tell not only the technician, but perhaps the quality manager and the facility manager that there's a mouse over by door number 3 on the left-hand side, and you need to go get it. So depending upon what you're manufacturing and what we're looking for, those are the 2 different things that we're using today.
Interesting. So one of the things that we were talking about is different vectors that pests can have to get in your plant around the facility itself. But the other area, right, is stuff you're getting, right, deliveries that are coming in. And if you're working in a bakery and you're bringing in grains or flours, and there's weevils in those suckers that you're bringing in your facility, which then go and infiltrate everything, or there's an animal that's hanging out in the bottom of the pallet, and then all of a sudden, it's loose in your plant running around. Birds, oh my goodness, birds, and receiving areas and stuff like that, a constant battle. Any recommendations for people on those type of issues and strategies around that?
Yeah, it boils down to relationships again, because the depending on the facility, if they're getting whole grain products, you can't inspect whole grain products every shipment. You have to know that the facility you're buying them from has a good manufacturing process and they're giving you the best possible outcome. However, you have to be aware that everybody is susceptible, no matter if it's whole grain or if it's flour, whatever it is, that you have to monitor for them. So monitoring for them with pheromone traps is the best way to go. Rotating the stock to make sure that the cold, damp, exterior wall is not, the best is not infested with any type of beetle, whether it be a scavenger or a whole grain. And but again, knowing that your materials, your raw materials, are their facility is clean, it's inspected, and they're going to give you some written guarantee that they're doing everything they can to prevent that from happening. But so prevention before it comes in, discussing with your supplier, and then monitoring in your facility. Keep an eye out for those whole grain or scavenger beetles.
Well, and I think that's a good point relative to the partnership as well, is the pest control operator can't go around and check all the materials that are sitting in the warehouse. That's not their job. That's the quality department's job. And I think that's a great opportunity then for cross-training and to use that PCO to teach the quality team and the inspection team, the receiving people, that these are the things that you need to look at. I worked in bakery a little bit, and man, if you get a problem with infestation like that, oh my goodness, right? There's not much you can do about it. And if you've got to throw away a bunch of raw material, $100,000 worth of raw material sitting in your warehouse because you have an infestation, that's not going to make the plant manager happy. So what I found with those two, Tom, is that it sneaks up on you, right? You have a low level problem you don't know about, then all of a sudden, to your point, you start seeing activity and pheromone activity, and it's like, oops, right? So you got to have your antenna up, plant side of things as well, to make sure you keep an eye on the pests too, right?
Exactly, absolutely. And then again, that's why when you have that relationship with your pest management professional, they're out there. They're not just going through looking at traps. They're looking at the environment as a whole. And when they come up on those pheromone monitors, they're able to tell you that, hey, we got a problem. This is what I'm finding. I'm finding it over here in the northwest corner. We have to immediately find out where that grain or that product came from. But again, it all boils down to that relationship and making sure that you've got good channels of clear communication.
Yeah, Elena made a good point here as well, is that knowing that life cycle, right? When are the larvae maturing? When are they flying around? These are all indicators and hints and tips that you have other problems going on in your facility. So a unique problem I had from my past, which was kind of crazy, was pests that you can't get rid of. So, for example, we had a plant that had a retaining pond out in front, beautiful, nice retaining pond. And every now and then that would fill up with water, and the local geese would go, "Oh, this is wonderful." And so the geese would make a home there. And then they would start hanging around the plant and eating the grass and make a gigantic mess. And I'm like, get rid of these darn geese. And I found out for the local regulations, you can't. You couldn't go out there and take care of the geese and chase them away. We had to hire a specialty service with specialty trained dogs who would come every now and then to chase the geese away. Are there any other examples like that?
That's a great question. And to be honest with you, the migratory bird field is extremely tight. And so one of the issues we had similar to that is birds nesting in a shipping dock bumper. And the facility manager wanted us to, get rid of the nest. Well, I believe they were bluebirds, and you're not going to go ripping a bluebird nest out. And I mean, you can't do whatever you need to do, whatever. I mean, it's food safety, but it's against the law. And so you need to, in order to get the permits to remove that nest, it would take as long as the birds to mature and leave. And once they're gone, you got to make sure that you get the nest, vacuum up around the area. But again, it's all migratory birds we're talking about here. And oh, by the way, there's just so many laws and regulations protecting them. You got to be extremely careful identifying what birds you're dealing with.
Yeah, and that's another area where your pest control company is going to be a huge asset for you, is understanding those type of unknown risks that you're not thinking about.
Exactly.
Yep. So as Elena said here, oh, cool. She also found bees on there in the chat there. So like your logo there for your pest control. That's pretty cool. That's awesome. I didn't know you could do that. That's really cool. So yeah, that was a big surprise for me on that side as well. So I'm kind of curious here as well, Tom. So with different types of food industries, bakeries and dairies and all these type of things, are certain food industries more challenging than others?
Absolutely. If you're a yogurt producer, the ability to, not so much from pests, but Listeria, coli, those are the things that we're going to have a problem with. And where are they going to come from? They're going to come from bacteria from animal droppings. And where are the animal droppings? And let's go back and revisit the roof issue and pigeons. And if you have a roof leak with the E. coli dripping through, and you say, well, that could never happen. Well, it happens, and now you have people that could tracking through a water spot in the floor. They might not put two and two together, and you're bringing it right into the production facility. Versus a bakery's got all dry goods, and our biggest problem is going to be mice. And not to say that mice won't be a problem in the yogurt factory, but it's going to be a huge problem because of the fact that mice, if they get into a grain bag or a flour bag and they start nesting, we've had mice nesting inside of a flour facility that was a bakery that was having it didn't rotate their stock, and so that produced a big problem when they went to move it. But everybody's a little bit different as far as manufacturing goes, and you got to be aware that different things, like we can talk about Listeria till our hair pulls out. They have different facility needs than. Same structural needs, same things we're looking out for, but things you want to be extremely careful of as far as more along the lines of Allie's, the things that she's going to look at. But yeah, we always got to be careful with animals and pigeons and birds and E. coli, and that's where we're coming from there. But more so in wet plants like yogurt than a dry plant.
So something else, and this just popped in my mind, you gave me a good lead on this, Tom, is also make sure that your pest control company understands, and a lot of times, Allie, I'm curious about your comments on this as well, is you have secondary facilities. So, oh yeah, we've got this offsite place a couple blocks down the way where we store pallets of packaging or old parts, it's kind of this boneyard type area that nobody really thinks about. Well, guess what? Pests are hanging out there, aren't there, Allie? You need to know about them.
Absolutely. So there are some facilities that will call it out of scope, Okay. However, with just a few questions from the auditor, we can determine very quickly if it should be considered in scope. What is over there, and are you bringing it to the main facility? So if that place does have some issues, you're just transferring the issues to the main facility, and now your risk is higher. So again, prevention, education, and just the basic GMP policies, even in that off-site building, is beneficial to any company, really.
Yeah.
Don't always
Yeah,
consider it
absolutely.
out of scope.
Yeah, and that's an important point on that, is that with the GFSI standards, they were very explicit in that, because there was issues outside of the United States with companies that would say, "Oh, no, don't go look over there. That's not in scope." And who knows what was hiding behind that wall. And the auditors didn't really have a whole lot of choice in that. But the standards now say that if, as an auditor, if you find something that they're saying is out of scope, but it actually implicates food safety, oh yeah, it's now in scope.
Yes, it's just following an audit trail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of times too is things that are purchased. We all love this, right? Engineering group gets a screaming deal on a piece of used equipment somewhere. There may be hidden areas in there where pests could be hanging out, and so now all of a sudden you're bringing this piece of used equipment into your production facility. Never mind allergens and all that stuff. But let's say that you have, panels and different conduit areas that are in there that who knows where this equipment has been stored, and all of a sudden, to Tom's point, the mice, this is a nice place to hang out and live, and all of a sudden you bring a piece of equipment in your plant, and right off they go.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's typically somewhere in a standards, in some section, that addresses that, new equipment, whether it's cleaning it before bringing it in, inspecting it, testing it. There's some kind of requirement around that to prevent exactly that from happening.
Yep, absolutely. And so definitely with different industries, you need to tailor these things and understand it. I'm kind of curious, what's in generic terms, of course, what's some of the weirdest thing you guys have seen in the pest control areas?
Well, I can tell you, we had a facility that they'd run two shifts, and the nighttime would come, 10 o'clock, they would want to go out for a cigarette break, whatever, they'd leave the overhead door open. And I don't know, it must have been 11 o'clock. We got the phone call, and a skunk had wandered into the facility. And so I hadn't been in business that long, maybe 10 or 15 years. And I thought to myself, well, I got to go deal with this. I can't send a supervisor over. And it was kind of unique because without thinking, I put on my animal control hat, and I took a long extension pole and I put peanut butter on the end of it. So that caused a whole lot of problems. The good news is we got the skunk out. The bad news is they had to do a lot of cleaning. Peanut butter.
It was a good idea.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool.
Darn those allergens. So in a previous company for me in my past, we were hosting a plant manager from a dairy plant in Tasmania, of all places. And his plant was in the middle of nowhere. And when visiting officials from headquarters would come, they would have to stay in people's houses because there was no hotels for, an hour away at least. It was crazy. And so the plant manager told me a story of, so it's like, every now and then, if we have to be really careful not to leave doors open and things like this, because we've had to chase, sheep or other things out of the plant that have wandered in through the plant and are now running around in the plant.
Yeah. Maybe earlier in my career, I might have had weird stories. At this point, it's like, okay, I've seen that before. Just the amount of roaches, and you can almost smell the infestation when you walk in. That was definitely something that's weird to me, that something doesn't smell right. And next thing you know, you're dealing with something, roaches or rodents.
Yeah. So Elena said that She had a snake. Oh, yeast. Yeah, that my wife would be 10 foot off the floor if she saw a snake. She hates snakes. And Cortland makes a good point here too. Is it's always in scope with FDA, right? You can have the best quality program, the best food safety systems, right? This is back to prerequisites. And FDA is out touring an area of the plant and a road runs across in front of FDA or an SQF auditor or what have you. It's over, right? It's done, right? You have failed that audit. That shows, right? And that's just an indicator, because for everything that you see, you always hear, I'm curious on this, Tom, right? Is like for every mouse you see, I always hear different varying numbers around this, but it's like, all right, for every mouse you see, there's probably at least 25 more that you don't. So you have a huge problem if you see a mouse running around.
Absolutely, but again, that's the obvious one. But you got to be on the lookout for mouse droppings in the corners, and that's why bright flashlights tell us a story. And if you've got an area that's got droppings in it, you don't have to see the mice. You really got to find out where they're living. And to your point, it's not so much the mouse that runs across the floor; it's the droppings that are in the wrong area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also don't forget about your third-party warehouses, because a lot of times, if you're a larger food company, you're bringing your product and storing it in somebody else's warehouse, and then that's getting distributed out from there. Make sure you're looking at that. Right? Where's your product? Oh, no, my product's all packaged up and it's fine. I think we all remember the food retailer who had a large warehouse in the South and had a gigantic rodent infestation, and he became a whistleblower because it was so bad. And that facility, I'm not sure if it got shut down permanently or not, but the videos you saw online on YouTube of the rats and the mice that were getting it, chewing into product and running around, I was just like, oh my God, horrible, right?
And when it gets to that point, and I think Tom would agree, it's too late. So the cockroaches don't typically come out during the day. So when they are very comfortable. And the same with the rodents. When they're out and about during the day, that bakery that Tom and I were at, we were just talking with the staff. They were down. It was a sanitation day, and they were just freely speaking to us, saying, "Oh yeah, they run around here all the time. Oh yeah, this is just like it's nothing." And again, Tom and I are looking at each other like, "What's going on?"
Well, and that's a great point, Allie, because a lot of times we talk on here about fresh sets of eyes. People get used to things, and it's like you go into a plant and you're like, why is that big bundle of tape and wire holding up that pipe? Oh, yeah, forgot about that. Pest Control is a huge example of that. And this is where a good PCO comes in, is their fresh set of eyes. And they're coming in there every week or whatever it is that their schedule is on in that facility, and they're looking at it laser focused, right? They're pest control, right? They're looking everywhere to make sure that these things are going great. You have to have those fresh eyes that are looking for these things. And I think that's kind of the theme for our talk here today. Is just like everything else, you have to be ahead of the curve, because if it gets to that point, it's too late, right? Now you're in damage control, and you don't want to get to that point.
Exactly.
Definitely.
Yeah. So if someone does find themselves in a position like that, Tom, let's say that you're a new quality manager, go into the plant, and you're like, holy crap. Is there like like an emergency button they can push and say, oh my God, help. I need some serious help here, and then you can come in?
Yeah, the real issue is that once they get to that point, it's not a one, it's systemic, right? And so you've got to change that mentality in the facility, and you have to identify people that, unfortunately, there needs to be a change in personnel here. This person's got to go. It's got to be, a whole buy-in, and that's the whole key when we're talking about integrated pest management in a plant like that. And do they have to stop production? It's not a bad idea to stop production and have a cleaning week, safety stand down, educational wise. When people see mice, now they think it's okay, and it's up to you or whoever, an inspector, to say mice don't belong here. When you see one mouse, you need to, whatever it is, hit the red flag, do whatever you got to do, and that's going to be the key, is that re-education for the new quality manager.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Ali, how would you approach that from an auditing standpoint if you saw a systemic issue like that?
Just like that, it's a program failure,
Yeah.
if not multiple, if not multiple program failures. So again, at this bakery, Tom and I were, it wasn't just pest management that was failing. It was sanitation. It was personnel practices, leaving the doors wide open, and it just becoming second nature. It was just habit, especially on a down day. So all of that, and like you said, integrated. It's multiple departments, multiple people need to be looking out for these things. It's prevention. That is really the key, is prevention.
Absolutely. So definitely, I promised this earlier here in the chat, and I definitely want to get to this really quickly, is what do you see out there, Tom, coming down the road the next 5 years or so? What type of new technologies and innovations do you see in pest control?
Great question, and it all starts off with artificial intelligence and what that means. So if we look at a facility right now, a large facility, let's call it an office building. Let's start there because they have the best. AI has the best stances inside a facility now. How moist is it? What's the humidity, if you will? What's the temperature? What's the temperature outside? What are the temperature readings inside as far as different pockets, control-wise, that way. And that's going to spread to pest management. There's no doubt about it. So we'll identify areas of humidity, and we're going to, these sensors are going to be able to say, there's a problem over here. And that's definitely what's coming down now. When COVID came out, one of the things we did was provide them with, the remote monitoring inside their house. So we wouldn't go in their house. We'd approach the house, we'd use a Bluetooth technology, and we would find out, well, we have some mouse activities, we got to get in. And so that type of discussion is going to happen on a bigger scale. It's happening today. There's no doubt that with the advancements in AI, just this year alone, that's going to have some sort of impact on the pest management industry as far as identifying issues early. But it's still going to be a ground game, leaving the back door open, the screens aren't changed. Those are the things that we can find after the AI tells us we have a problem in the northwest corner type thing,
Yeah. So just like everything in life, the tools are only as good as the person who's using them.
Correct. Yeah.
So what I was thinking about this while you're talking as well too. This could be really cool because Ali had said earlier, it's like she'll go to plants, say, hey, I want to go up on the roof, and everybody's like, we're not allowed on the roof. That's safety hazard. Drones. I can see drones being used in the future for these type of activities.
Well, drones are currently used on facilities. On growing locations. So I forget who the company was, but they basically analyze the plants, how they're doing, what needs fertilizing, and it's all AI. It's all graphics, and so the water is applied in the areas that are dry. So absolutely, drones are going to play a huge part of it.
Yeah, IR cameras looking for hot spots in certain areas. It's just, it's good. This is going to be really cool.
Exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. So, gosh, man, time flew here, guys. We're almost out of time. So let's kind of bring this up and summarize it for everybody. Ali and Tom, what would you like to leave people with here today for our chat?
Go ahead, Tom.
So whenever if you're a food service manager or you're dealing with food product production and who someone who is, and they're having a problem, just start with the basics. Start with who's your pest management company, where's the roadblock, what's the problem to that mouse, or why do we have cockroaches walking in the front door, and analyze it that way, and make sure the communication is good. And if the communication is bad, that's one of the systemic problems that you're going to have to get over, and be blunt about it, because let's face it, some of the problems we hear in the news today, with Listeria could have been stopped years ago. And if it was for someone who said, hey, there's a problem here, Joe, my good friend, says we should do this, and take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Ali?
Yeah. There's some key takeaways that I would like to wrap up with. Number one, that Tom already said, communication, and open communication and honesty between all parties. And two, it's no longer pest control, it's integrated pest management. So the onus is not just on your company, the pest management company, but you guys too at the facility, so it's integrated. A lot of different factors come into play. And 3, it may not be an easy fix. You know, one mouse ran in, you caught it, you're good. But if you've got an infestation, it may not be as simple as, oh, just put more traps down. So it may not be an easy fix based on your infestation. So just communicate, get everybody involved, and understand it may not be easy to fix it, but it could be fixed and prevented.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's perfect. And so here in the chat, guys, is Tom's website. So as he said, he's in the Massachusetts area. So callfreedompest.com. Look him up. He's got some really good resources on his website. So glad you're out there keeping our backs and making sure that we're getting these things taken care of, Tom. So thanks for all you do. Appreciate it.
No problem.
And Allie, thank you as well for doing the auditing and now the consulting side of things and to help people build these programs out. So I can tell with this call, right? You guys have a great partnership together and you work really well together. And that's what we want, right? That's what we want for sure.
Absolutely.
So,
thanks for having me back.
Yeah, absolutely. Got to have each other's back. So with that, guys, we're going to bring our chat to a close here for this week. Thank you. This is an amazing chat. As usual, the comments, and the back and forth here, I love it. I would love to pull more things up here on the screen, but I am reading everything as we go through. And some of the comments that Cortland had here with in Mexico with they would let coyotes in to take care of their pests. Oh my goodness. So always fun here on the chat, guys. So thanks for making it entertaining as well. So with that, we're going to close out. We'll be back here next Friday, of course, at 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern for the next food safety chat on LinkedIn and YouTube, where we live stream every single week. And enjoy your weekend. Have a great one, guys. You've earned it. Have a great time, and we'll see you then. Thanks a lot.
Bye, everybody.